Imagine this: no explosion, no warning sirens, no trembling skies, just a silent, instant vanishing of the very air that feeds every flame of life. In the same heartbeat, birds would drop mid-flight like torn pages from the sky, jet engines would choke into sudden silence, and every fire on Earth would blink out as if the planet itself had been plunged into a cosmic vacuum. It wouldn't feel dramatic at first. There would be no time to scream, only a strange pressure in your chest, like the world had suddenly forgotten how to breathe with you. Inside the human body, chaos would begin faster than fear. Without oxygen, blood would turn useless, muscles would weaken, and vision would dim as the brain starved in real time. People would collapse not from pain, but from instant blackout, like millions of lights switched off across cities and villages at once. Hospitals would be powerless in that moment, because even machines depend on oxygen to keep cells alive. Survival would not be a matter of strength, wealth, or technology, it would be pure biological roulette. The oceans, often imagined as safe and untouched by the sky's drama, would not escape the nightmare. Fish and microscopic life would suffocate in silence, triggering a shock wave through the food chain that feeds the entire planet. Coral reefs, already fragile, would suffer mass die-offs, turning living underwater cities into ghostly white graveyards. Even after oxygen returned, the scars beneath the waves would take years, perhaps decades, to heal, if healing remained possible at all. Plants, the green architects of Earth's atmosphere, would also be struck, but in a twisted paradox, they would be both victims and future saviors. Photosynthesis would halt instantly, leaves would droop, and delicate cellular systems would fracture under stress. Fields of crops would suffer invisible damage that farmers would only discover days later when harvests failed and global food prices surged. The minute would pass, but hunger would linger far longer than the silence. High above, satellites would drift into danger as atmospheric balance shifted in strange, unpredictable ways. Without oxygen, the protective layers of the atmosphere would briefly weaken, letting harmful radiation kiss the surface more aggressively. It would be a blink in cosmic time, yet enough to disrupt sensitive electronics, navigation systems, and communication networks. For a world stitched together by digital signals, that single minute could fracture economies and spark global confusion. Cities would not collapse into rubble, but they would become stages of sudden stillness. Elevators would freeze between floors, traffic lights would go dark, and power plants relying on combustion would abruptly shut down. Chemical factories and refineries could suffer internal reactions, causing leaks and contamination that would reveal themselves only hours later. The danger would not end when oxygen returned, it would just change its disguise. Animals would suffer in heartbreaking silence. Pets would collapse beside their owners, wildlife would fall in forests and fields, and entire flocks would vanish from the skies. Some species might survive due to lower oxygen needs or fortunate timing, but ecosystems thrive on balance, not luck. Predators would lose prey, plants would lose pollinators, and the invisible web of survival would tear in thousands of places at once. Human civilization, so proud of its progress, would realize in that minute how fragile its throne truly is. No fortress, no bank account, no army can protect against the absence of air. Even astronauts in space rely on carefully controlled oxygen bubbles, reminding us that life is not powerful, it is carefully maintained. That realization alone could shake global psychology, changing how societies view risk, safety, and the illusion of control. Religions and philosophies would be shaken as people searched for meaning in a disaster that came without warning and left without explanation. Some would call it a cosmic test, others a scientific anomaly, and many would see it as a warning written across the lungs of the planet. Art, literature, and film would be forever changed, haunted by the idea that existence can be paused without permission. The fear would not be loud, but it would be permanent. Scientists would scramble to explain the impossible. Was it a solar event, a shift in Earth's magnetic shield, or something beyond known physics? Entire fields of research would be born from that single minute, with governments funding massive atmospheric monitoring systems. Humanity would begin watching the sky not for beauty, but for survival, knowing now that the air itself is not guaranteed. Children born after the event would grow up with drills not just for earthquakes or fires, but for atmospheric emergencies. Special shelters, oxygen reserves, and emergency masks could become as normal as seatbelts. The world would not feel as open anymore. Every breath would be a reminder of how close everything once came to stopping. Safety would become a global obsession. Yet in a strange, humbling way, that minute could also unite humanity. Borders feel meaningless when the entire planet gasps together. Nations might argue over politics, but air belongs to no one and everyone at the same time. Environmental protection would no longer be a trend, it would be a survival commandment written in memory and fear. And perhaps the most terrifying, the planet has survived asteroid strikes, volcanic winters, and mass extinctions long before humans ever whispered their first words. If oxygen vanished for 1 minute, life would suffer, but the planet would continue spinning in calm indifference. The disaster would be personal to us, not to the universe. So the next time you take a quiet breath without thinking, remember how violent the world would become without that invisible gift. No sound, no fire, no flight, no heartbeat strong enough to resist the absence of air. Just 60 seconds could redraw the story of life forever. And that is the shocking truth, our entire civilization is balanced on something we never see, yet cannot survive without. Long after the minute had passed, doctors would begin noticing strange, delayed effects in survivors, memory gaps, weakened organs, sudden heart complications that appeared without warning. The brain, even when deprived for seconds, can suffer microscopic injuries that reveal themselves years later as lost focus, mood disorders, or shortened lifespans. It would be the kind of damage that doesn't make headlines but quietly reshapes millions of lives. The world would learn that survival does not always mean escape from consequences. Airports, factories, and chemical plants would uncover another hidden danger. Systems that failed silently during that minute might restart incorrectly. Pressure tanks could weaken, pipelines could crack, and reactors could suffer tiny instabilities that grow over time. Disasters weeks later would be traced back to that single breathless moment, proving that catastrophe does not always arrive immediately. Sometimes it waits, patient and invisible, before reminding humanity what was lost. Forests would tell their own story in the months that followed. Trees stressed by oxygen deprivation would become vulnerable to disease and insects, leading to massive die-offs that no one would initially connect to the global event. Wildfires would increase as weakened ecosystems lost their natural defenses, turning once lush regions into tinderboxes. The planet would seem to react in slow motion, like a delayed echo of that missing minute. Global trust in environmental stability would collapse. Climate discussions would no longer be debates but urgent survival strategies, because people would now know the atmosphere can betray them without warning. Air quality, once ignored by many, would become a sacred concern, with cities investing in massive purification systems and underground refuges. Breathing would no longer be taken for granted, it would be measured, protected, and feared. Children born after the event would grow up hearing stories of the silent minute, a moment when the world almost forgot how to live. Schools would teach atmospheric science with a seriousness once reserved for war history, reminding students that the true battlefield is often invisible. Emergency oxygen drills would become as normal as fire drills, and masks would hang beside doors in homes across the globe. A culture of preparation would replace the old culture of comfort. Philosophers and poets would struggle to describe the terror of nothing happening, of dying not by force, but by absence. They would write about how life is not only threatened by destruction, but by the quiet removal of what sustains it. The idea would haunt humanity, that the most powerful disasters do not roar, they simply remove what we never thought could vanish. Silence would become a symbol of extinction. And in the end, that one missing minute would teach the harshest lesson of all. Earth does not promise continuity, only possibility. Every breath after that would feel like borrowed time, every sunrise a reminder that survival is not guaranteed by habit. Civilization would continue, yes, but with a deeper awareness that life is balanced on invisible systems that can fail without drama. Not with fire.